Again, if we have any Roman Catholic people with us tonight,
當然，如果我哋當中有天主教徒嘅話，
we're not here to criticize you alone,
我哋唔係淨係喺度批評同你嘅宗教有關係嘅事，
or more specifically, the Roman Catholic religion.
即係唔係淨係羅馬天主教嘅事。
It's incorrect to say we're here to criticize people.
亦都甚至唔應該話我哋嚟呢度批評人咁樣。
For people are the victim of this,
因為人喺呢件事裏邊係受害者嚟嘅，
not the source of it.
唔係呢個迷惑嘅根源。
I also want to say something to you about the Pope.
我亦都要提到有關教皇教宗嘅事。
I know less of the present Pope, but I knew quite a bit about the previous one.
依家嗰個教宗我唔係咁識佢，但係以前嗰個我都幾識佢嘅。
I am convinced that John Paul II was a sincere man.
我認為咧呢個若望保祿二世咧係一個好真誠嘅人。
I believe he was as much a victim of this deception as anyone else.
我認為佢係呢個迷惑嘅受害者，好似其他人一樣。
We're not critical of him as a person,
我哋唔係對呢一個人有好多嘅批評，
but sympathetic and would hope the best for him.
我哋當然有好多憐憫，希望佢好啲啦。
And for the present Pope,
同埋對依家嗰個嘅教皇，
I would say this also,
我亦都係咁樣認為。
that if the present Pope is right,
如果依家個教宗係啱嘅話咧，
we should leave our churches and become Roman Catholics.
如果佢講啲嘢啱嘅，我哋應該離開我哋嘅教會去參加羅馬天主教。
And if it is wrong, we should have nothing to do with it,
如果佢唔係啱嘅話，我哋應該同佢毫無關聯。
but we should have a love and burden for the Catholic people
但係我哋應該對天主教徒有愛有負擔，
and do all that we can to reach out to them with the gospel of Jesus Christ.
用耶穌基督嘅福音嚟到去傳俾佢哋。
And so let us turn our attentions to the doctrines of Roman Catholicism.
我哋依家嚟到去睇羅馬天主教嘅信仰。
And I'd like to ask you, is it a true faith or not?
我要問你，究竟呢個係咪真嘅信仰呢？
I'm going to show you documents that are official documents of the Roman Catholic Church.
我要將羅馬天主教嗰啲正式官方嘅文件嚟到攞嚟俾你睇。
Most of them are from the Council of Trent.
大部分都係由天特會議嗰度出嚟嘅。
You can have access to them on the internet and check them yourself.
你可以喺 internet 嗰度自己揾去查證下都得嘅。
We're mainly going to be focusing on the doctrine of justification.
我哋大部分都要集中喺點樣稱義嘅嗰個信仰上邊
which has to do with the way of salvation.
呢個就係對救恩嘅同救恩係好有關係嘅。
And how a person is made right with God.
一個人點樣喺神面前稱義呢？
Now we're going to pass a judgment on what we see.
我哋要喺我哋所見到嘅嘢度嚟到落一個判斷。
But we want it to be a biblical judgment.
但係我哋一定要係根據聖經嘅判斷。
We don't want to be any harsher than God would have us be.
我哋唔想喺神要求我哋之外更加嘅嚴厲。
We don't want to be any softer than God would have us to
亦
be.
都唔想喺神嘅要求之外，比佢嘅要求更加嘅柔和。
We want to evaluate it the way God would.
我哋要按住神要我哋去衡量，咁樣去衡量。
I would turn your attention briefly to the book of Galatians.
依家我哋暫時去睇一睇加拉太書。
And I'd like to remind you of what this book is about.
嚟到去同你講呢本書講緊咩呢？
And we're going to see that a very serious error came into the churches of Galatia.
要嚟到去睇加拉太教會好嚴重嘅錯誤。
And I would propose to you that we're going to find those same errors in Roman Catholicism today.
咁我亦都要同你講，今日喺羅馬天主教，你會揾到同樣嘅錯誤。
And because the two errors are essentially the same,
因為呢兩個錯誤係一樣嘅。
we will find in the book of Galatians a biblical judgment of this error.
我哋就要喺加拉太書裏邊揾到聖經裏邊所提到嘅判斷啦。
And so what God says of the Galatians and their error,
神對於加拉太人同埋佢哋嘅錯謬，神會點樣講呢？
I would propose to you we should say of Roman Catholicism and its error.
我哋亦都照樣嚟到去判斷羅馬天主教同埋佢嘅錯誤。
We should not excuse what God does not excuse.
我哋神唔赦免嘅，我哋唔可以去赦免。
Now, what was the error in the churches of Galatia?
加拉太人嘅錯誤喺邊度呢？
I would remind you that the Apostle Paul helped plant some of those churches.
我要提醒大家，係保羅自己去建立其中一啲嘅教會嘅。
And so they began with sound teaching.
所以佢哋開始嘅時候咧，係一個好正確嘅真理教導。
But after the Apostle Paul left, false teachers came in.
當使徒保羅離開嘅時候，假師傅就嚟啦。
These were men who had been Jews and now were saying that they were Christians and followers of Christ.
呢啲人咧，佢原本係猶太人，但係佢哋依家話我哋係跟隨耶穌嘅，我哋係基督徒啦咁樣。
And they told the Jewish people or the Gentile people of the Galatians churches,
佢哋同加拉太教會裏邊嗰啲外邦人咁樣講
that it was good that they had faith in Jesus.
你信耶穌係好好嘅。
But they also were responsible to obey certain aspects of the law of Moses.
但係你亦都同時要去順從摩西律法裏邊一啲嘅律法度規條。
We see this in Galatians 4:21.
我哋喺加拉太書4章21節佢嗰度佢咁樣講。
It was good that they followed Jesus.
跟隨耶穌係好嘅。
But the men needed to be circumcised.
但係佢哋都要受割禮。
We find this in Galatians 5 verses 2 and 4.
呢個係加拉太書5章2至4節講嘅。
It was good that they believed in Jesus.
信耶穌係好嘅。
But they needed to keep the Sabbath and the Jewish feasts.
但係你都要守安息日同埋守猶太人嘅節期。
This is referred to in Galatians 4 verses 9 through 10.
呢度咧就喺4章9至10節揾到啦。
And it was good that they thought that Jesus could save them.
當然如果你認為耶穌基督可以救你係好嘅。
But they also needed to perform good works towards their justification.
但係你要稱義咧，你都要有好行為。
Galatians 5 verse 4.
5章第4節加拉太書。
Now when the Apostle Paul found out what was happening,
當保羅發覺咁樣嘅情況嘅時候
he wrote the harshest book in the New Testament.
佢就寫咗新約聖經裏邊最嚴厲嘅書啦。
In the opening chapter he said this.
第一章佢咁樣講。
In verses 6 and 7,
第6節到第7節
I am amazed that you're so quickly deserting him who called you by the grace of Christ for a different gospel, which is really not another, only there are some who are disturbing you and want to distort the gospel of Christ.
我希奇你們這麼快離開那藉着基督之恩召你們的，去從別的福音，那並不是福音，不過有些人攪擾你們，要把基督的福音更改了。
Notice that they were deserting Christ.
你要留意佢哋喺度離開緊基督。
This word again has the idea of a change of loyalties.
呢個咧亦都係改變個效忠嘅對象嘅意思。
At one point, they had great faith in Christ.
有一個時間，佢哋對基督嘅信仰係好。